Paalala lang po na ang mga talakayan at mga impormasyong mababanggit sa programang ito ay sa pawang mga impormasyon lamang at hindi payong legal at hindi rin at walang kinalaman sa mga personal at natatanging sitwasyon ng mga nanonood at nakikinig. Ang Australian Immigration Law ay madalas na nagbabago kung kaya't makabubuti na ugaliing magsayasat at humingi ng payong akma sa inyong pansariling pangangailangan. At ngayon, live mula sa Brisbane, Australia, ang inyong host at tagapagtalakay ng mga balita,
Hello, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. So we're live once again. It's Wednesday, so we're starting early at 5:30. It's mainly because, as I've said, our July shows are all special for all of you. So magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. At kung nandiyan po kayo, nanonood kayo sa amin, bumati po kayo at and say hi, hello. Tonight is a tax night. Kasama natin yung ating isa sa pinakamagaling dito sa Brisbane, which who am I going to introduce later on. Okay, sandali lang po ha. Titingnan ko lang yung aming dashboard dito at muli hindi ko alam kung saan ko hanapin yung inyong mga comments at inyong magandang gabi. Tama ba ang ginagawa ko dito? Okay. Sandali. Mabuti andito lagi si Carl, ano? Kasi kung wala si Carl, mawawala ako sa inyo ng ganitong klase. So, ayan. Okay. So, ayan. Okay. So, nakikita ko yung iba sa inyo. So, they're watching now. And as usual, we're starting very early today. No? So, we used to start at 6 o'clock. Pero dahil medyo mahaba yung topic natin, so magkakaroon tayo ng kaunting kahabaan dito sa pag-uusapan natin. Okay, so before we get to that, as usual, yung iba, they're waiting for some updates with immigration and with visa processing. We're still doing that. Kung napapansin niyo po, meron kaming mga updates sa aming Auspac visa page just to let you know what's going on. And so far with the visa processing now, it's getting better than before, mainly because the immigration is doing or processing the application now, and there are some visa grants lately. And unfortunately, marami rin kaming nababalitaan na maraming refusal, especially sa student visa. Now, there was a time in visa processing that there was 72% refusal. So we're not hoping that that will be the same case for this time. So sana lang ay mabagal lang talaga yung proseso at hindi yung mga refusal na nangyayaring ganoon sa mga naririnig ko. But on the positive note, marami ding mga visa grants and a lot of them have started. Yung mga hindi pa nabibigyan ng visa, so we had to defer their courses and they will have to start maybe in October, if not September. Okay, so also, marami rin po kaming nababalitaan, maraming nagsasabi dito na ang protection visa ay patuloy na ine-entertain ng mga Filipinos. Lalong-lalo na yung mga nasa desperate situations. Yung iba talagang desperate. Yung iba naman ay nakakabalita lang na mas madali daw yung protection visa. Now, can I please remind you na ang protection visa is only open for those people who are needing protection. It's mainly because there is a threat or harm sa kanilang buhay. So hindi po nangyayari yan sa lahat, no? At karaniwan diyan ang reference syempre ay yung may civil war doon sa kanilang bansa o kaya naman ay may terrorism sa kanilang bansa na hindi talaga sila makauwi. And sa mga Pilipino po, please lang po, wag po tayong mag-apply ng protection visa. Because it's not a good visa for Filipino, it will be refused. Walang approval ng protection visa para sa mga Filipinos, and don't be deceived by anyone na ma-approve yung visa nyo. So bakit hindi dapat mag-apply ng protection visa? One, napakapangit po sa kalagayan at sa status ng Philippines. Because we are not a country that has that problem that would characterize as people needing protection. So lahat po tayo, kahit na bukas, pwede tayong umuwi sa Philippines without anyone threatening us, no? Without anyone harming us. No? Kasi kapag ka marami pong nag-a-apply ng protection visa, ang pangit para sa Philippines. Parang what are you trying to portray for the Philippines? Na ang Philippines ay unsafe, unsecure, at yung iba pa ay na parang tipong pag pumunta ka ng Philippines ay napakaraming murderers at napakaraming killers who can just easily kill you. Na ganun po. Hindi po ganun. Kawawa naman yung mga taga-Pilipinas. And also, kawawa din po yung mga nag-a-apply ng visa to Australia. And this is precisely the reason why there are delays and there's so much scrutiny with visa applicants coming from the Philippines. Kasi ang dami nyo pong nag-apply ng protection visa simula ng COVID. And may I remind you that you're not going to skip the immigration kasi marami na rin po kaming balita na they are being interrogated by the immigration themselves. They are quickly identified by immigration. So please don't do that. You will only be serving yourself but not the whole Filipino community. To say the least, nasisira po yung pangalan ng mga Filipino. And of course, pag nag-apply kayo in the future para sa mga kamag-anak nyo at nakitang kayo ay nag-apply previously ng protection visa, that will bite you back and your relatives. So don't do that. Okay?
Okay. So ang topic natin ngayon is Australian taxation basic for Pinoy migrants and visa holders. Like I mentioned before, na yung siguro of tax, I'd like to tell you this story. Kasi nung unang punta ko dito sa Australia, we went to Griffith, New South Wales. Isa siyang farming community sa New South Wales. And ang unang naming trabaho is mag-weed ng tomatoes. So ngayon, sabi nung naghanap ng trabaho sa amin, ito yung tax file number declaration. So just invent a name and invent a tax file number and all the details and then they submit it to the employer. E ngayon, knowing as a tax professional, sabi ko is yung tax na deduct sa wages ko is dapat na refund sa akin yun. Kaso hindi, dahil peke yung nilagay kong pangalan doon, I couldn't get it back. So sabi ko ganun, marami talagang people who are misinformed about tax sa Australia. Ngayon, ang goal ko for today is to actually talk to you about tax basics. Why, what, who, when, and how, kung ano yung tax, kung ano ang tax sa Australia, and try to parallel it with situation in the Philippines. And I will also give you my top 10 tax tips to help you meet your tax obligations to Australia, especially now, katatapos lang ng 30 June. And then we'll open the floor for question and answer after that. So first question is, why do we pay income tax? So I think most people know why we pay income tax. And that's part of the reason why we have such a good lifestyle dito sa Australia, kasi the tax funds are lifestyle, hospitals, it educates our kids, it pays for the police who gives us security, etc. We have better roads. And a lot of people actually are very grateful for that. Pero we have a price to pay for that. Ang taxation natin sa Australia is, meron siyang built-in welfare system. Kasi I'll just show you the tax rates sa Australia is, yung first $18,000 is tax-free. Then from 18 to 45,000, yung tax is 19%. Tapos from 45 to $120,000, it goes up to 32.5%. Now, 120 to 180, you're paying 37% tax, and anything above 180,000, you're paying 45% tax. Pero that's not all. We also pay 2% Medicare levy to assist yung health situation and yung health system in the country. So if you're earning more than $180,000, 47% yung marginal tax rate, which is almost half. Pero that tax system is designed with a welfare benefit, kasi ang gusto ng gobyerno noon nung ginawa nila ito is yung mga mas can afford to pay more tax, they pay more to help out subsidize yung lifestyle ng mga lower income. So built in na yung yung welfare dyan sa system natin. Kumpara natin yan sa Philippines, and I'm sorry I misspelled Philippines in this slide for those people who noticed it. Ang tax rate sa Philippines is first 250,000 pesos is zero, then it progresses up to above $8 million is 35%. So mas mura yung tax sa Philippines ng 10% kasi, well actually 12% dahil sa atin, 47% yung marginal tax whereas it's only 35% dun sa top marginal tax, right? So that's the difference between the Philippine tax regime and Australian tax regime. Now, the next question I'd like to answer is what is income tax? So siguro ito yung pinakamagugong discussion natin today because this is where yung mga misconceptions appear. Kasi some people, they don't know what is income. I mean, most people know what income is, pero yung slight variation in the laws dito sa Australia treats certain income differently and then it creates confusion. And then yung deduction, lalong-lalo yung deduction, what we can claim and what we cannot claim becomes a very big topic among people dahil every people has different circumstances, pero one would say, oh, I claim this and that, and then other person would want to claim that even though they have different circumstances. So dapat po kasi tinetailor natin yung ating situation, yung mga claims ng ating income and expenses sa ating situation, and that doesn't happen very often lalong-lalo sa Filipino community. It's about what they heard somebody did and they're trying to do that. Now, income tax is tax on your taxable income, although it's very simple, simply defined. Yung taxable income kasi, and then we ask, what is taxable income? So yung taxable income natin has two components. One is assessable income. Ibig sabihin, yan yung matataksan nating income, less allowable deductions. So ngayon, let's break it down into two portions. Yung assessable income. Ang assessable income natin is, let's talk about who gets assessed dun sa tax muna. And ang residency for in Australia for tax purposes is different for residency for migration purposes. So you can be a resident in you can be a resident in a foreign country, pero for tax purposes, you could be treated as a local dito sa Australia. So to determine that, we have three main tests. There's a fourth test, but it doesn't concern our audience siguro kasi it's specifically for Australian working overseas. So yung three tests natin, we have the reside test, which is simply, if you reside in Australia, then you must be a tax resident for tax purposes. And resides mean nandito ka physically. So let's say international student ka, you have a 2.5-year visa. The day you arrive, kasi you're going to be residing here in the next 2.5 years, then you will be treated as a resident for tax purposes. You don't need to pass any other test. Yung next test po natin is yung domicile test, which is yung permanent place home, permanent home or abode is in Australia. So that means that that probably applies for people na taga dito, then they go overseas backpacking, and then ang permanent place nila or home is Australia. Pero when they actually go backpacking, let's say 6 months in Europe, they will not shed yung kanilang tax residency. They still need to file yung tax return dito sa Australia because they are domiciled in Australia. And then there's some people who would travel between two countries. Let's say, uuwi ako sa Pilipinas almost half of the year, and then nandito ako sa Australia the other half of the year. Now, saan ako resident for tax purposes, and we have a 183-day test done for that. 183 days is half of 365. So if more than half of the year nandito sa Australia, then you would be considered as Australian resident. Now, why is residency important? Kasi if you were Australian resident for migration purposes and for tax purposes, you will be taxed on your worldwide income, which means income from all sources around the world, including your income from the Philippines. Pero kung foreign resident ka, like our international students, you'll only be taxed on income source in Australia. So yung income mo sa Philippines, you have to file a tax return sa Philippines to actually return that kasi hindi ka permanent resident dito sa Australia. And this is reflected with Philippines as well. Kung foreigner ka sa Philippines, you will only be taxed on Philippine income. Ngayon, we have 3 types of income: personal income, business income, and capital gains. Those 3 types of income is a reflection also of what income is in the Philippines. So personal income, that's income according to normal concepts, which is yung wages natin, yung interest on our income, dividends, and then, dividends for shares, at saka yung iba nating investment. That's normal income that accrues to under our name. So taxable po siya. Business income is kung meron po tayong business under our own name, and then we also return that in our tax return, pero under business income kasi different category po siya. Now, capital gains is ito po yung mga assets na hino-hold natin mostly for long terms, like houses, shares that we actually hold for a long term and then we sell it in 5 years time. And then yung accretion po ng value, which let's say bumili tayo ng house $500,000 and we sold it for $1 million, yung increase na 500,000 taxable po siya. So there are specific rules about capital gains. And then ang taxing point po is once we dispose it, kailangan po nating magbayad ng tax at that point na dinispose natin siya. Ngayon, this creates a little bit of confusion with some clients that I've met, lalong-lalo na sa cryptocurrency. Kasi what they do is, let's say may $1,000 cash sila, then they buy Bitcoin for $1,000. And then, so yun yung asset nila, yan yung capital asset. If Bitcoin goes up and they cash it out, kung dinispose nila yung, let's say, $2,000, yung $1,000 is a capital gain sa kanila. Ngayon, what's creating confusion is they use their Bitcoin to buy another cryptocurrency. And then they would say, well, hindi ko pa natanggap yung cash, so dapat hindi taxable. And they're giving me a lecture on what is taxable or not. So sabi ko, in-explain si Cassandra, let's say na hindi ka pinayagang bumili ng Bitcoin, ng other currency using Bitcoin, you would have to cash out yung Bitcoin mo and use that cash to buy the second asset. Ngayon, you dispose the first asset, and every time na dinispose mo yung asset mo, that's a taxing point. Not because you didn't receive the cash. Once you dispose the asset, matataksan ka. So, yan yung, and if that's confusing aspect, then probably that's an indication that you might need to talk to a tax professional to actually take you through the tax rules. And there are other types of income like pension. We exempt income and non-assessable income tulad ng pension or government grants. That doesn't hit our tax return kasi exempt po siya for tax. Now, yung mas madugong part is yung allowable deduction. Ito na yung maraming stories na naririnig natin kung ano yung clean name nila o kung...
Chris? Sorry Chris to interrupt. Questions dun sa income.
Yeah, sure.
Balik tayo dun sa kabila dun sa una kasi maraming nalilito about their income. Unang-una, when they come to Australia, palagi nilang nabalitaan TFN. Kailangan na ba silang mag-apply agad ng TFN as soon as they come to Australia? As soon as they arrive to Australia?
That is highly advisable. That's my tip number 1 is apply for the tax file number as soon as you can and then lodge your tax return. Kasi the thing is, once you don't have a tax file number, what identity for tax purposes? And when people deal with you, like when you go to the bank, they will ask for your tax file number. Ngayon, the tax office mandates na if you have income, if you're going to give someone income and they don't have a tax file number or ABN, are required to withhold the top marginal tax rate of 45%. So let's say kumita ka ng $1,000, they'll only give you $550 because they need to withhold yung $450 to actually give to the tax office, and then it's up to you to claim it. Ngayon, kung meron mong identity, which means that you are a personality that the tax office knows, they will just tag yung income mo na $1,000 to your tax file number and it will appear in your pre-fill. So it's important na as soon as you arrive, is to apply for a tax file number.
Kailangan daw ba nilang mag-open na ng bank account? Kasi seemingly sa online application, it's asking for a bank account, which they don't have. Kasi sabi naman sa bangko, hindi rin
They
sila
didn't.
pwedeng mag-open ng account. Ano yung totoong nangyayari doon?
Well, I think you can open a bank account without a tax file number. Dahil ngayon, ang mangyayari lang kasi pag di ka nagbigay ng tax file number, they will withhold the 45%. Pero the thing is, you need the bank account first. So you won't earn interest until at least 30 days later. So what you do is open a bank account without the tax file number and then apply the tax file number. And once you have it, go back to the bank and say, here's my tax file number para hindi ka na nila i-deduct yung 45%. Pero you can actually apply for a bank account. And I would suggest that the first thing when I arrived in Australia as an international student, I was taken to Commonwealth Bank in Belcon and ACT. From the airport, we actually applied for a tax file number. So I'm proof that you can apply for an account without the tax file number. Kasi, within 1 hour of my arrival, I had a bank account already.
Yeah, I think, that is correct. Yung iba, nahihirapan silang mag-open ng bank account because they've been here for a while and never open a bank account. When it passed 30 days, I think the bank will really require a lot of things from you to be able to open a bank account. So, hindi requirement ang TFN to open a bank account. Tama ba? Okay. And kung mag-a-apply man sila ng TFN, di nila kailangan yung bank account? Is it so? First things first, bank account, and then TFN or TFN bank account.
I don't think you need the bank account kasi I assisted my nephew arrived in March. Estudyante siya sa Gold Coast. We actually applied for TFN online and didn't ask for a bank account because he just needed to print the form, take it to the post office with his identity cards, and then he got his tax file number. And actually applied for a bank account without the tax file number, and he applied for a tax file number without the bank account. So we do both without having one or the other.
And then you said about assessable income, yung Australian resident for tax purposes. So merong mga tests, no? 3 tests yung binigay ni Chris kanina. Pero marami pa rin nagtatanong, especially for those people who are doing their tax return first time. They always ask, are you an Australian resident for tax purposes? They wouldn't know kung anong isasagot nila. Doon pa lang sa first question, stuck na sila. What can they do? What's the correct answer for that?
We have 3 tests there, and the recite test, if you're here for at least the short to medium term, let's say 12 months, then you say yes. Kasi if you're here for 3 months, then that becomes questionable kasi you will not be, dahil 9 months, you're outside of the country. So if you're here for more than 6 months, then I would say yes, you will pass the recite test or the 183-day test. So dapat you will say yes. Pero you have to be mindful that it is resident for tax purposes. Kasi they cannot differentiate between migration purposes and tax purposes. So for tax, because for more than half of the year, tax resident ka.
Yep. Yeah, that's very good. You mentioned yung dalawang purposes. Now, one is for tax purposes and the other one is for migration purposes. Yes. Now, for migration purposes, there is also that question sa kahit na anong forms na fill upan nyo or sasagutin nyo. No? Now, usually for migration, if you intend to live or to stay in Australia, say for example, studying in Australia and you have the address in Australia, you can always claim that you are a resident of Australia. For migration purposes, purposes. But it's different for tax purposes. So that's why you have to be purposeful when you come to Australia. No, laging may purpose yung, yung ginagawa mo. Hindi pwedeng lutang-lutang.
I'm glad you actually say that, Ma'am Teresa, kasi yung purpose for tax, even it's also very important kasi sometimes there are things that you buy and you want to hold it long term, and then yung circumstances will change, and then you sell it very short term. Initially, yung purpose mo was to hold it long term. You just need to prove that. So it's important to know your purpose, not only siguro in purchasing assets and life, you need to know your purpose then.
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
purpose, especially if documenting it. If you say in Facebook, here's my investment for the next 10 years, that's purpose enough to actually say you're going to hold it for long term. And you can use that to convince the tax office that that was my purpose then, and then my circumstances changed. And this is what I'm doing. So.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to the income, yung mga sources of income. Medyo, there's so many confusion with this one. Nagtatanong yung iba, yung online job daw ba nila, is that taxable? Is that considered income kahit na when they're working in the Philippines or somewhere else, yung mga offshore or whatever?
Well, the thing is, kasi when we go online, we will be treated as someone with a business. Ngayon, in Australia, when you have a business, you have to have an Australian business number. Because if you went to an Australian customer and they will pay you and you didn't provide your ABN, 45% withholding tax. Again, they have their right to actually withhold 45% and then not give that to you until you actually have provided your ABN mo or tax file number. So yes, it's worldwide income, and income is anything that accrues to you. So when you sell, even though, let's say you have YouTube channel and then you get payment from YouTube, that's income to you. And, you can treat it as a hobby. So pwede mong hindi ka mag-ABN. Pero if you treat that as a business, and that you're actually, plugging, you're actually plugging products. So that becomes like a business. And so I would suggest that you go the ABN way and actually declare that as business income.
So it can be considered in two ways: one, personal income, or business if they're doing it as a business.
In a business-like manner. So there is a difference between hobby and business. So there's a point where you do it as hobby, and then siguro as a hobby hindi siya taxable kasi it's very minimal. But when it becomes business-like, when you have systems in place, you advertise or you introduce yourself as I'm a YouTuber, then suddenly you are in the business of marketing, and then that becomes a business, and it will be taxable as a business income, and you should have an ABN before you actually venture into business.
That's very good, no? That's a simple test. If you introduce yourself as a YouTuber or a blogger, then you are acting like a business person.
Yes, because that's
a wonderful
marketing,
test.
isn't it? Yeah. It's marketing. So and so it's actually a business, and the tax office will test, is it a business? Are there systems in place as put as a business? Then if it's yes, then it's business income.
Wow. Okay. How about those people who are doing business at home, say selling cakes or doing all this and that? And alam mo naman, yung mga Pilipino, no, very, very entrepreneurial yung mga Pilipino. Pero let's see, what's going on with
this? That's a very, very touchy subject. Kasi there are people who I know who are really good at baking, and in practice, they sell their products, And siguro yung titignan natin is the activity. If you're baking 7 days a week, you can't honestly say that's a hobby. If you're advertising yung bread mo or cakes sa Facebook, then that's actually a business. It's not, hobby normally is you do it for fun, and some people will buy it for me. Yes, fine. But suddenly, if you're actually saying, okay, here's my bank account, please deposit it in there, the tax office actually watches your bank account, what goes in there. Because we have rules against money laundering and terrorism. So they watch everything. So if they can see that, 5 times a week, you would do a payment, that's not going to be a hobby. Now, there's a few things that's actually going to be, I would like to touch on that home-based one. First is yung ABN. Do you have an ABN? Kasi it's now a business. Let's say it's not a hobby anymore. Do you have ABN? Do you have insurance? At saka food license. Kasi you cannot do cook unless you have a commercial kitchen. During the pandemic, it was such a big issue in the Filipino community. Some people dogged the other people in and sinasabi nila, oh, it's pandemic, we're just making money. I understand that. But also there are rules. And kasi if you actually run a business, you have to have insurance, you have to have commercial kitchen. So your cost mo will go up. And then you're competing against a home-based na yung oven lang nila yung expenses na electricity. So yung discrepancy in price, it becomes an unfair competition then. So so medyo madugong topic yan kasi some people dakay yung puso, but at the same time there are rules and there are reason why there are rules. So I don't know where you sit on that, pero for me kasi is pero as a tax practitioner, and probably siguro yung tinitignan ko dun is yung risk. Kasi if somebody got food poisoning in there, they will sue you. And you traded under your own name, and then they will sue you for everything under your own name. And sabi ko, that's too much risk.
Yes.
So I'll just go and find employment somewhere than take that risk.
Yeah, sabi nga natin kanina, meron tayo laging purpose. Ngayon, and with the purpose is you have to see the risk of doing something. Now, if you're doing it for a hobby, then at least free ka sa mga liabilities because you're not making money out of it. No, you're not benefiting something from it. But if you're doing it for profit, that's different. No, and if you're doing it for profit, you have to be licensed and you have to have the insurance to cover you just in case something happens. So yun, malaking risk yun, ano? And one thing that I'd like to highlight, ang buhay po sa Australia is very, very dear. It's very, very expensive. Sa Philippines, you know, sometimes I hear people na pag may nasagasaan, binabayaran na lang ng 20,000 pesos. That cannot happen in Australia. Siguro yung buong panahon ng buhay mong nagtatrabaho, kulang pa yun para sa ibayad sa one life na pwedeng maging at risk when you're running a business na walang license, no? Hindi sinasabi natin na yung non-licensed business are doing something wrong. But you know, accident can happen. Hindi natin alam yan. Those are the things na sometimes hindi talaga natin kayang kontrolin. Oo. Kahit na anong ingat mo, minsan hindi galing sa'yo or meron palang sangkap na meron kung ano man dyan. No? But anyway, so that's very important, Chris, na malaman ng ating mga kababayan.
Touching base on the presentation ni Ace last week is
the
compensation is they will restore the position you would have been in had the injury happened. So, and you're earning, you know, lalo kung may potential, kung paano kung CEO yung natira, and they will be, you know, compensated for, you know, $200,000 salary. So, and then that you need to factor that in. It's good to be entrepreneurial, pero siguro you need to manage the risk as well.
Yep. Proper business. Yeah, proper business. And there's you know, a huge amalgamation of laws, different laws coming in. So andyan ang health law, medical law, labor law, public liability, and kung meron pang injury dun sa pumasok sa bahay nyo na meron pala kayong sirang hagdanan, nagpipick up lang ng gold, ano ba yun, yung mga nagtitinda ng mga gold jewelries, no? Baka mamaya sabi mo doon sa customer mo, andito na yung gold, pick upin nyo na. Tapos yung bahay nyo, baka merong isang hagdanan na sira dyan, natalisod pa, nako, that's public liability. Are you covered? That's the thing, okay? Importante yun. Yung mga nagigig sa kanilang mga musical, ano ba, yung, alibaw, di ba, marami tayong mga shows na, ano, paano ang income nila? Are they supposed to declare that? Ano ba yun? Kailangan ba nila ng ABN?
Will actually advertise it for money, I think. Kasi if you actually turn up at a restaurant, let's say, you know, as a guest, and then they happen to give you $100 because maybe you can convince the tax office that that's a hobby, and it's you know, incidental yung pagtanggap mo. Whereas if you went and said, okay, I'll play for 3 hours and that will be $300, then that's a business-like manner, and that has to be coming through your tax return.
Okay, so talagang yung pag pumapasok na pera, paano pagka-cash? Hindi na
well, that's the thing. It's now going to be, kasi kung cash economy na siya, then the person who spent it cannot claim it kasi walang resibo. So you don't return it, pero the other person cannot claim it. Eh kung ako yung may business, I'd like deduction kasi it will lower my taxable income, and it becomes a discussion on what happens there. I know na kasi I did cleaning when I was a student as well, and I got paid in cash, so I've never declared that in the tax. In the tax kasi I didn't know anything better noon. Pero ngayon, if I'm going to do cleaning, I will actually apply for an ABN kasi I can actually claim my deductions for traveling, for insurance even, and that's now I know better. Pero noon nga, wala tayong source of reliable information. Now we have so much. Pero that's what I would have done if I'm actually cleaning. Ngayon, in my own name, I would go for an ABN and then do it.
Yeah, talking about that, nakalimutan kong tanungin si Ace last time. Paano kung ikaw yung may-ari ng bahay and you ask for a cleaner to come in, na aksidente ang cleaner, whose responsibility is it? Who's liable?
I would suggest, this is more in your line kasi background, pero I would say na we look at the negligence kasi kung negligent yung cleaner, sinausaw niyo yung vacuum cleaner niya sa tubig, that's their problem. Whereas kung yung sinasabi hagdan, may sirang step, then that's you. So it would be on who's responsible, who caused the problem.
Who is at fault?
Yes.
Okay. Now, teka lang, meron tayong tanong dito from Irene Dia. For resident for migration purposes, can a 491 visa holder do this? I think she's referring to what? Yung ano kaya ibig niya sabihin sa this? What are the benefits of this over the resident for tax purposes? Naku, parang hindi na natin masyadong nalaman what is she referring to. Irene, your question for resident for migration purposes, can a 491 visa holder do this? I'm not so sure what is the this in this in your reference, and what are the benefits of this over the resident for tax purposes. Ano kaya yun? Hindi natin nasundan kung ano yung this niya.
I think we need more details.
I-clarify mo kasi baka na doon ka sa saan kayang point ng discussion yung pagtanong mo, what is the this? Ano yung reference mo? Oo. Pero kung ang tinutukoy mo, let's say for example, in subclass 491, if their visa holder, if they can claim their income kung nanggaling man sa online o nanggaling man sa mga Bitcoin currency or whatever. Now, the point there is the location of the business kasi under 491, you should be in the regional area. If the money is coming from outside papunta sa iyo, just make sure that there is a head office, merong business ka sa regional nakalagay. Hindi pwedeng doon din tapos ikaw yung kumikita na nandiyan sa regional. So the business giving you the salary or giving you the benefit should also be in the regional area because it will in effect kill the purpose of the government while you are all in the regional area kung yung mga employers naman pala ay going or coming from everywhere. Ayan na si Irene Diaz. Sabi niya, I meant that with the choice between resident for tax purposes versus resident for migration purposes. By this, I meant, can a 491 visa holder do the resident for migration purposes option?
Parang choice ata ang sinasabi niya.
You can't,
it's
not a choice.
Okay, no, it's not a choice. You cannot select either or, no? Or yeah, because when you're dealing with migration, that particular question is about migration. When you're dealing with the taxation office about your tax, then the question is about the tax. It can't be and or. Pero kasi magkaiba nga yung purpose. So ang magtatanong lang naman sa dito, Irene, hindi yung ordinaryong tao, ano ka ba, Australian resident for tax purposes or for migration purposes. Only when you approach and when you have dealings with these two offices.
Yeah.
And
So
491 can have that.
sa 491, I still don't get the question. I meant, can a 491 visa holder do the resident for migration purposes option? Well, the 491 is wala namang choice na ano eh, for migration purposes when you're doing your tax, no? So obviously, Australian resident ka, if you refer to you staying in the regional area, then you can use that test, yung reside test or domicile test and 183-day test. Obviously, you should be able to meet all those tests na ikaw ay for migration and taxation purposes na. Oo, parang ano ka na talaga, dito ka na, OC ka na. Okay. 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 I got confused regarding that. Since we were talking mostly about resident for tax purposes or resident for migration purposes. Thank you for answering. I was wondering if I should select resident for migration purposes since I am on a 491. Yeah, so it's not an or. If you're dealing with taxation, then you will have to say, yeah, taxation based on the test na binigay ni Chris kanina. Pero sa migration, usually ang question dyan is yung residency mo, saan ka nakatira, and if you intend to stay in Australia, then you are a resident for migration purposes. Yeah. So depende kung sinong office ang dinidil mo. Pero kung nagtagal ka na dito, obviously you are both.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else? Yeah, so yeah, yung mga nag-gigs, kung ano yung income nila, no? Pwede, dapat kasama yun sa ide-declare nila. Pero do they have to have an ABN?
The question is, are you doing it in business-like manner? If it is, and most business establishments, once the deduction, they will ask for an invoice. And if there's no ABN sa invoice mo, they will have to withhold. That's the rule. They will have to withhold 45%. And if you want the 100% to be given to you, then you have to give them an ABN. So that is, you want to get the 45% from the tax office, it's probably a no. So you have ABN.
Yeah. Chris, another confusion pa sa kanila, do they have to put GST? Kasi personal services, right?
Yeah, it depends. I think if you go Uber, they require you, it's mandated that you have to have a GST registration. But for other businesses, ang threshold po natin is $75,000. So you have to earn $75,000. Once you hit that mark, you have to register for GST. Below that, you can choose to register for GST for some reason, pero it's not mandatory. Over 75, it's mandatory unless the industry actually requires you. And I know Uber requires you to be GST registered.
Pero if they're acting on their own, well, obviously, hindi naman siguro nila makukuha yung 75,000. So, pwedeng GST, hindi mandatory.
So, you don't need to register for GST. And because I had a client who came in and then she's not registered for GST, she started charging GST because she thought that she should. So, I sabi kong ganun, you can't. It's the opposite of, some people, they are registered for GST, they don't charge. This one is charging GST. So I said, what can I do? And I said, technically, you need to return the GST portion.
Yeah.
Or, you just wait for the tax office to audit you and say, hey, where's the GST? Then just give it back to them. So, but you cannot charge GST unless you are GST registered.
Yep, correct. Okay, so yeah, so moving on. Ang sarap ng discussion. Okay, yep.
Allowable deduction. Ito yung mas madugo na discussion kasi I would expect more question around this topic kasi ang tax office defines allowable deduction as loss or outgoing to the extent that it is necessarily incurred in gaining or producing assessable income, but it's not capital, private, or domestic in nature or in gaining or producing exempt income. So 2 points there is that it's a loss or outgoing. That means you lost something or diminished something, and it is necessarily incurred. So yun yung 2 main points dyan, and that's that's what people do not understand because of the myths that's going out there, and it's because of what they've heard from people who were here before them. And so ngayon is ATO has specific guides on deductions you can claim, and there are some specific to the occupation. Ngayon, the most common topics I'd like to talk about probably the 5 most common deductions that we have is the $300 that most people say, oh, I can claim $300 without a receipt. The second one is uniform and laundry. Then we also have travel. And I'd like to touch on donations and also self-education. So let's talk about the first one, which is the $300. So the tax office substantiation rule says now, if your expense is $300 or less, you don't need to keep the receipt or produce a receipt. But some people take it now, oh, I can claim $300 because I don't need a receipt. The rule says you have to have a loss of or outgoing. So kung hindi ka gumastos ng $300, you are not eligible to claim that $300. You have to have incurred it, not because they don't need a receipt. You can put it in, then fine. It's like saying, hey, audit me. Probably the tax office is not going to audit you for $300, so most people get away with it. Pero you have to incur that. And ngayon, the other misconception is it's $300 per item. Na pag ginawa nilang shoes, $300, pants, $300, so they don't need the receipt. No, it's $300 for all your expenses. Once you hit $300, you need the receipt for everything else that you have. So ngayon is, you could see that $300, it's like they're inviting the tax office to audit them because 300 yung threshold. You know, be creative, put 295 at least. So I shouldn't be saying that, but you know, people just say 300, you could see $300 deductions everywhere. So ngayon, the next one is uniform. This is very, kasi most of the jobs that we have, especially manual ones, like cleaner, waiters, we need to have white shirt, black pants. And the tax office says that you can use that white shirt and black pants to a party. So how would I know that you're not using that for other purposes? So kung mixed purpose siya, dapat you apportion it. Pero normally, the tax office will say if it's generic, yung shoes or clothing, then it should not be deductible. Pero kung may logo siya, halimbawa yung shirt mo is may logo and that's distinct and you paid for it, na distinct siya na uniform, then you should be able to claim that. So yun yung rule about uniform. Kung generic siya, you cannot claim. If it's got logo, you should be able to claim. Now, the laundry is, most people would claim $150 on laundry. The tax office actually issued rates for laundry. So kung naglaba ka, and your uniform is mixed with other laundry, that's 50 cents per load. And kung naglaba ka, pero yung uniform mo lang yung nilabahan mo, then that's $1 per load. So ngayon, you calculate the number of loads that you did for the year, and then yun yung laundry deduction mo. And most people just put 150. That means that you're just doing 3 loads a week na yung uniform mo lang yung nilalabhan mo. And sometimes that's questionable kasi yung shift mo is 2 days a week lang. So you only have at least 2 uniform. How could you do 3 days of laundry in a week? So yun yung laundry. And most people put in 150, but you should calculate it based on the number of times that naglaba. And
Chris, may question lang ha. Siguro balik to kanina do sa pinag-uusapan natin about income. Sabi niya, how about if someone working full-time but doing cash jobs on weekends? Is it still advisable to get ABN?
I know of someone who I had this discussion recently. Kasi when I came in as an international student, Australian Embassy actually, well, because my scholarship was an Australian government scholarship, they educated us that you should actually follow the rules. You shouldn't break it. And that's the mandate for us. And getting cash is actually, you know, it's under the table. Fine, I get it. You need the job. I understand that because I've been there. The thing is, once you pay cash, let's not talk about tax muna. Let's talk about the cash transaction. The employer cannot claim that expense. So they have sila. Pero at the same time, you are not under any record na employee ka. What if something happened to you? You know, you cut your finger while you're cooking. for cash, can you claim that? Kasi wala kang proof na employee ka eh. So, one. And then the other thing is, what would, if the tax office, oh sorry, let's say the immigration raided that business and they found you there working, what would that do to your visa? So what are you really risking? Plus, kung nag-cash ka, wala kang superannuation. Kasi that's an additional 10%. Kaya binibigyan ka ng cash kasi gusto mo makatipid sa superannuation. Pero your superannuation is something that you use for your future. It's for your pension. So you're missing out on a lot by having cash. That's just my perspective on it. Kasi I've been there. I've had cash jobs myself many decades, a couple of decades ago. So that's one thing that I told this person. That's what you think about. Now let's look at tax. Yung tax kasi is it's income to you. So technically, it should be in your tax return. Ngayon, because there's no record, you might be able to get away with it, but everything is being watched. If let's say, in a business, 5 kayo, somebody was very unhappy out of the 5 and left and complained to the tax office saying they didn't pay me super, they didn't do this. The tax office comes and investigate and say, let me look at the videos of whether that person came in and out of this premises and they saw your video. What would happen then? The tax office says, who's that? And they say, oh, that person didn't declare their income from this place, then you get in trouble as well. So, ang daming risk factor. So, if you're asking whether it should be included in your tax return, what I would suggest is, siguro, kung ang long-term goal mo is to migrate here, it's good to have the employment record. It's good to have your superannuation boosted out. So I would probably choose to go with somebody who would give me a payslip rather than somebody who isn't. Kasi technically, kahit wala kang payslip, kahit cash out, if the tax office finds out, it will be income to you and they will assess you. And that's only from the tax office perspective. I don't know kung ano yung take ng migration office pag natagpo ang hindi dineclare yung cash income, then Australian migration might have something to tell you about your visa too. So that's my take, pero it's income to you. And if they don't want to pay superannuation, they don't want to, then I would go the ABN way and say, can I just issue you an invoice? It will be exactly the same thing. They don't have to pay me super, pero at least there's a record of me receiving that income and I can declare that under my own ABN.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. I have two views about that. So different perspective, not entirely different from what you're saying, but looking at the migration point of view, if you are holding a certain visa, there will always be conditions on your work rights. Now, if you are allowed to work 20 hours, then you are allowed to work 20 hours. If you're allowed to work unlimited, then you are allowed to work unlimited. And it should be consistent. Now, the number of hours you do for working should be consistent on your work, with your work rights. No? So kasi tinitingnan din yan ng immigration. No? Kung ang laki-laki ng kita mo, tapos 20 hours lang, it's a trigger. O kaya naman ay bumabagsak ka sa pag-aaral mo, hindi ka nakaka-attend, super baba ng mga grades mo, and minsan ang reason mo pa ay may trabaho kasi hindi ka nakabangon o pagod na pagod ka, or even just a failure in terms of your attendance. It's very easy for the immigration to see it. This person is not really studying, not attending the class, but he's spending his time working. Okay, so that's the thing. And also on another side naman, yung ating social obligations then, no, we have to look at taxation system as something good. We have to stop looking at the taxation system and what the government is doing as something bad. You are already now in Australia. Don't bring that mentality you have in the Philippines wherein you can cheat. I'm sorry to say, I'll be very blunt, that you can cheat in Australia. You know what? Tax here is working. You have very nice parks, you can barbecue, no fees at all. You can use the road. The medical system is working, the social services are working and things like that. And you have the obligation to actually carry the government. Di ba kaya nga kayo umalis sa Philippines because na-frustrate kayo sa system. But now that you are in a good system, make it work. Now help it to be continually working for all of us. I think that's also the reason why I brought out the protection visa a while ago. Because some people are only thinking of themselves. They are becoming selfish, and they say that I will apply for protection visa because I get a Medicare, I get all these full work rights and things like that. Please don't do that, because if you're getting from the government because you are on a protection visa, which you are not entitled to have, you're cheating the government. And sa Tagalog, magnanakaw yun.
Exactly.
And we
That
don't
is
want
true.
to be branded as like that, no? Hindi. At pag magnanakaw ka, sinungaling ka rin, ano? So, I mean, it's a simple thing to do. We are in Australia, not because everything can be traced, not everything can be found out by the immigration. You have the obligation to actually do the right thing every single time, whether there's someone looking or not someone looking. Do the right thing, and you will reap the benefits of all this. If not, I'm very sure of that. I'm very sure of that. Okay, so let's moving on.
Okay, thanks. So with the $300 threshold, we have the uniform and also laundry. Third topic is travel. Travel to and from work is classified as personal in nature. However, some people, kasi ang rule ng tax office is if you don't have a logbook, you can claim up to 5,000 kilometers travel without a logbook. Ngayon, people think that they can just put 5,000 there, but to and from work is not actually deductible. However, kung dalawa yung work mo, from work number 1 to work number 2 is deductible. Or if you are an itinerant worker where yung workplace mo shifts, let's say health worker ka, you report to the Brisbane office, then you get sent to Privy Island or to the south side, and you're not being reimbursed for that travel, you can claim that travel from your point of work to another place of work. So yun po yung rules natin about work. It's not because there's 5,000 kilometers available there without any proof. You can claim that. You still have to incur and actually use that. Incur and actually, yung expense talaga nangyari.
So, ibig sabihin, hindi pwedeng i-claim yung mga hindi talaga lumabas sa bulsa mo at ginamit mong padala sa Philippines.
Well, that's the thing. The next one is donations kasi. And a lot of people actually, with the donations, ang rule sa donations is you have to have a receipt, an invoice. Tapos yung deductible gift recipient dapat yung binigyan mo, like Red Cross or Salvation Army. And some churches actually, they give you an invoice kasi they are registered as charity. Ngayon, a lot of people say, oh, I donated 20,000 to my family and to my church. That's not going to be. Kasi first is, kasi may sabi na 5,000 yung refund nila kasi lahat ng pinadala sa Pilipinas claim. Sabi ko, that's you actually in the tax office to audit you. Unfortunately, I know someone who came to me after na-audit siya ng 3 years, and he has to pay back $21,000 in tax because of all these fictitious claims. That's without penalty, and he couldn't, so they filed bankruptcy. The tax office actually has done that to people. If you cannot pay, then they force you to bankrupt, and you don't want to be bankrupt.
That's a good point din sa migration, Chris. Kasi once you have utang sa gobyerno, that will come up. And
Yeah.
and you have to declare it, kasi di ba may declaration sa immigration kung ikaw ay merong Australian debts or something, then you have to declare yes, or kung yung asawa mo meron, yes, or someone involved na merong, yes. So you have to say that, and that will stop you from sponsoring someone, no, until you settle that debts.
Yeah. And can I just say on top of that, kasi a lot of students, they actually have more than one job. Ngayon, ang $18,000 natin is tax-free. Pero ngayon, two jobs mo, yung susunod na kita mo, nakapatong yan dun sa kita mo from job number one. So, tataas na yung income mo. And there's a question dun sa tax file number declaration, do you want to claim a tax-free threshold? So, if you're going to claim a second tax-free threshold, bababa talaga yung tax mo, and then suddenly, yung utang nila, 5,000, 6,000, kasi wala nang limit yung job of, yung 20-hour was set aside for now. And then somebody is saying, how will I pay that? Sabi kong ganun, well, you actually were given the tax. You took it home. So now you had just to give it back. Eh kaso nagastos na nila. And so beware na pag more than one job kayo, you have to claim just one tax-free threshold from one job and the rest should be taxed at kayo.
And paano nila mababayaran kapag nangyari yung ganun? So, pwedeng installment?
They have to come up. Pero ngayon, the tax office used to be generous kasi because of pandemic, then you can actually talk to them and say, I cannot pay that. Can I pay it over 12 months, over 18 months? And then you have an agreement and you make the monthly repayment. Pero if you fail just one repayment, the whole amount becomes payable. So you can talk to the tax office, but they're getting stricter now kasi a lot of actually stop paying them. So they're actually very aggressive with debt collection.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here, Chris. I just got a new insurance as a performer. Galing kay Mickey. Okay, I just got a new insurance as a performer last month of June, but I've been performing before this. Do I apply this as deductible this tax season or next time?
Well, yung expense mo, especially for a small business, the expense is claimable when you incur it. It's on cash basis. So when you outlay the cash, you can actually claim that. So kahit nasa June siya, but it's for the next 12 months, you can actually claim it. Kasi ang year end natin is 30 June, so you should be able to claim it at the 30 June last financial year.
Okay, so ibig sabihin, kung binayaran niya yung insurance niya before 30 of June, pwede niyang i-claim yon as deduction.
2022. And this is one of the tax strategies for businesses like you, Ma'am Teresa. Sometimes you look at your income and sasabihin mo na, this is too much tax. So some people, I actually tell them, instead of invoicing at 30 June, invoice at 1 July so that you pay it next year. That's on the income side. On the expense side, if you can prepay your phone bill kasi dumating yung invoice, your insurance, prepay, interest, lahat prepay mo before 30 June so you can claim the deduction. And so you're pulling the deduction back and pushing the income. And that's a classic tax strategy, which to talk to you all, or whoever talks to me, I actually tell them this is what you do at the year end. And can I just say, plug it in na, kasi normally, yung idea ng tao, yung tax is not a common discussion sa Philippines. So medyo parang allergic yung mga tao sa discussion. Pero they come to me after the year end, once it's done, and they said, this is what I did. And then I will say, well, I don't have a magic time machine that goes back in time. And I'm not going to talk dates just to get you the deduction. What I'm educating my client is to actually come to me in April. This is what I've done for the last 9 months. And then this is what I'm going to do in the next 3 months. And let's plan. So you things instead of telling me once the date is done, kasi we cannot go back. No one can go back in time for now. Wala pa ng time machine. Pero we can go back. We can go at April. Let's say, okay, ito yung projected tax mo. And then you'll say, okay, that's too much. And then we can say, okay, you can do this. A, B, C, and D. Contribute more to your super. Prepare all your expenses. Then we have time to do things ahead of time. So bali proactive tayo, hindi tayo reactive. Kasi once 30 June is done, it's done.
Yeah, that is true. True as well for migration. Wala rin po kaming time machine. So yung iba, Yung iba, they do their application, ano, and then pag andyan na yung problema, saka
yes.
pupunta sa amin. Not that we don't like you, you know, we're very good in solving the problems, pero maiiwasan yung mga problema na yun eh. So, lagi kong sinasabi, don't mess it up and then you come to us, no?
Yes.
Mas madaling magtrabaho sa amin if we start from the very beginning kaysa yung na-mess up na saka kayo pupunta because really it will take us a lot more time to do it, and baka meron na rin kayong nagawang mga bagay na hindi nyo dapat gawin na nandoon na, no? So yung mga ganoon, yeah. So yeah, ano pa ba, may question pa dito. Question po, is HEX considered a debt? Sabi ni Dayanara.
HEX is a debt to the government kasi binabayaran ng government yun. Ngayon, the repayment is calculated based on your income. And so the higher your income is, the higher your repayment is. But yes, it is a debt to the government.
Yeah, so hindi na rin HEX ang tawag ngayon, no? Sa health na, no? Higher Education Loan Program.
Yes,
Yeah.
health. It's
health na ngayon. And then from Darwin, question po, may limit po ba yung donation deduction?
There is no limit. So far, wala pa rin limit. So long as you have the invoice, then you could be donating $1 million. Sometimes, merong incentive, I think sometime in the past, where the government says, if you give $1, we'll give you $1.50. I think maybe it wasn't donation, but sometimes the government scheme has that. Pero wala tayong limit. Wala tayong limit on how much. That's why people can get away putting $20,000 donation kasi yung pinadali nila sa Pilipinas. Pero that's like an audit coming your way.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on. And I think,
so the only other thing that about deduction that I'd like to talk about is yung self-education. So yung self-education, if you're using educating yourself to actually improve your position at work, then we can claim that as a deduction. So as connected yung work mo sa education mo. Pero there was a situation where we have students coming in studying cookery, and they actually enrolled in a cookery course, then found a job as a chef. Ngayon, they're connected, pero from the tax office perspective, you came here as a student. So you came here to study. Then you found the work later. So the study came first before the work. For it to be deductible, you have to have work first, then improve your position to claim the deduction. Ngayon, if you came here as a cookery student, then you found a job as a chef, we cannot claim that. But let's say you're a nurse, and then you came here on childcare visa, so you studied childcare, but somehow you found a job to become a nurse kasi meron qualified ka sa Philippines eh. You found a job as a nurse, and then you shifted to improve your chances at getting promoted. You shifted your course to nursing. Now it's arguable that you actually did the course to improve your working condition, and you can have an argument to include that as a deduction kasi your work happened first and then the improvement happened later. So whereas the other way around is you were educating yourself kasi that's considered as capital. It's like me, I studied the accounting degree. I cannot claim my education after kasi I worked after I did my education. So
that is a very good insight, Chris. So talagang kailangan nyo ng tax ng accountant when it comes to that, no? Baka kasi may nami-miss out kayo. Like that, for example, for nurses, yeah, that's a very good example that that we can draw out from Chris, no? Okay, so take note of that, highlight that. Baka mamaya nami-miss out nyo yung thousands na binabayad nyo na hindi nyo nakiklaim, tas trabaho kayo ng trabaho. Sayang din yon. And maraming dollars yun. Okay. Yep.
So let's just fly through quickly the last few slides because I'd like to go through my top tax.
Yeah.
So who pays tax is whoever earned the income. Is the one who pays tax. It's not so simple, pero kung minsan kasi is may kumikita, and sabi, pakilagay nga dun sa pangalan ng misis or sa anak ko. within the bounds of the law. Kasi you're the one who exerted the effort, so you're the one who's supposed to pay income. Meron po tayong rules against income splitting, and so somehow the tax office will come up and find you if you do that. So that one pays the tax. Now, how do we lodge a tax return? So there's 3 ways of lodging a tax return. You can do it by paper, pero it takes a long time to do that. You can do it via MyTax, which is via MyGov, which is online, or you can go to a tax agent and actually have them prepare it for you. Advantage via the tax agent is, apart from the fact na it's an expert preparing it, is that we have an extension until 15th of May to lodge the tax return. If you lodge it by yourself, you are actually going to have to lodge it by 31st of October. So ngayon, how does the tax office monitor everything? They do data matching. They would look through the motor registry, insurance registry, your bank account, your health insurance. So everything is connected na po. And so it's very hard to hide electronic transactions. It's almost impossible. If you wanted to hide, then you have to go cash. But we've discussed the downside of doing it for cash, under cash economy. Tapos, non-lodgement and non-payment has penalties, so they are very hefty penalties. And when is income tax payable? Yung income po natin is when we derive it, it becomes payable, and then we do it on an annual basis. So that's why we launch an annual tax return. Yung ating employment income, the tax is deducted when we get paid, kasi that the employers are mandated to withhold it and give it to the tax office. So look at it as yung employers natin are agents of the tax office. They're actually withholding it for remittance to the tax office. So that's why it's called pay-as-you-go withholding, because as soon as you get paid, they take off the tax. And we also have rebates and offsets that the government gives us. There's a low-income tax offset of $700 or $1,500 for low and middle tax offset. Ngayon, the offset is, it can only reduce your taxable income. So if you didn't pay any tax, wala po siyang marireduce, and they're not going to give that money to you kasi it's used to reduce your tax. So kung wala kang binayarang tax, don't expect a refund. That's one. And and usually people, and the thing is, just a word of warning, yung 1,500 tax offset, that went from 1,080 last year to 1,500, but this is the last year. 2022 is the last year they're doing it. So next year po, kung nakuha kayo ng 1,500 na refund, expect next year that to be zero kasi wala na yung government subsidy. Unless the government changed their mind during budget, we'll see about that around May next year. And just running through my top 10 tips. Get your TFN as soon as possible and lodge your tax return on time. We've discussed that. Ensure all your income are declared, including your online sources and sharing economy, because the tax office knows about them, especially kung nasa electronic form siya. Number 3 is claim all allowable work-related deductions. The tax office has a lot of information on that. And keep all your receipts for 5 years. The reason being is that the tax office can audit you 5 years from the time, up to 5 years from the time you lodge your tax return. That's why they want you to keep it for 5 years. And also, but that's a normal audit. But if they think you're cheating the system, there's no limit. They can go back as far as they want to. There are other deductions available. Number 4, donations, tax preparation fee, income protection, self-education, union fees, memberships, and subscriptions. So just to name a few. And if you are not, number 5, if you're not eligible for Medicare benefits, which are non-residents, apply for a Medicare entitlement statement. That would show that you're not entitled to Medicare, and therefore you shouldn't be charged the 2% Medicare levy. So yung mga international students natin, please apply, because there's hundreds and thousands of application and it takes up to 28 days. But I've heard that there's already a delay kasi there's a surge of application because people want their refund. So do that as soon as possible. Number 6, if you're operating under an ABN, ito na yung $75,000 threshold natin, you need to be registered for GST. Number 7 is beware of scam calls. I've received a lot of scam calls myself. And so I made fun with them and I said, oh, where are you from the tax office? And I asked them a question and one started swearing at me and told me that he knows my phone number and where I live. And I was like, okay. But they're very, very scheming and they're very, very creative. They make it sound that they're really from the tax office. So what I do is to test whether it's legitimate. I ask them what department I should ring back and then ask for the number. I Google it. If it's a government tax office, then I ring them back. And then I'm the one calling them because I don't know who's calling me. So number 8 is very, very important. Get information only from reliable sources like OSPAC, Visa, and the ATO website, and the tax agent who's also registered. If number 9, if you are wondering what else you could do to minimize your taxes, consider consulting a tax professional. Kasi tax professionals spent a lot of time actually perfecting our craft, like our dear migration agent over here. And we do a lot of training and keeping up to date. So we offer value for money, that's for sure. And number 10, and this is very, very important, even though a tax agent or somebody else prepares your tax return, once you sign it, you're actually telling them that you are saying that what's in the tax return is true and it is your responsibility. You cannot say that the tax agent prepared it because you signed it, and so it's your responsibility. You have to remember that. That's why you have to know what's in there and what you're signing before you sign.
Yep.
And if anyone wants to get in touch, I am on Facebook as Chris Ramos CA and also on LinkedIn as Chris Ramos CA.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much for that. Pero may mga tanong pa, Chris, ha? Huwag ka munang aalis. Okay. May tanong pa si Dayanara. If I plan to continue with my CPA program po, pwede ko po bang i-claim yon as self-study? Working rin as accounts assistant po. Salamat po.
Okay. So we will have to, for you to actually improve from accounts assistant, would you need a CPA qualification? I would argue that you would be able to, kasi now you can climb up the ranks, especially accounts assistant. That means you can be an accounts person and then climb up the hierarchy. So I would say yes, that's claimable because you are improving your chances of getting higher income. And I would be on your side to argue with the tax office. That's claimable.
Okay. Yep. So what else? I think okay, dual citizenship, Chris.
Okay, dual citizenship.
Paano ba, anong treatment sa dual citizenship? Are they going to pay dual tax?
That goes back to where you are a tax resident. Kasi if you are a tax resident in Australia, you are taxed on your worldwide income, which includes your Philippine income. And the thing, it's a mirror effect sa Philippines. If you are a tax resident in the Philippines, tax on your worldwide income, including your income tax in Australia. So you need to decide where you would want to. Maybe if you're retiring and you have a lot of income, as shown earlier, 35% ang top tax sa Philippines and it's 47% sa Australia. So, well, difference. So that might have that might sway where you spend more than half of the year. So you have to spend more than half of the year. And the thing is, so what happens is if you're a dual citizen and you have your worldwide income in Australia, let's say you are Australian tax resident, so we declare all your income, but that includes your income in the Philippines. Now, for Philippine purposes, you have to do a tax return in the Philippines for your Philippine source income and pay tax in the Philippines. So what would happen is all your income that was declared in the Philippines we include it in Australian income, we calculate the overall tax minus the tax that we paid in the Philippines. So that in double tax. Kasi ang Philippines and Australia has a double tax agreement where in the agreement, it actually says that the resident should only be taxed in one jurisdiction. So there should be no double taxation. So that way po, we would be able to claim yung credits na binayaran natin sa tax. So we just needed to top up yung tax. So if we paid 35% in the Philippines and 47% dito sa Australia, you'll only have to pay the 12% difference between the two taxation regimes. So it includes future planning. So yung purpose mo is if you want to save tax, maybe look at the taxation regime and where you would spend most of your time in a year. That's what I would say.
Wow, that's very nice to hear. Hey, and Chris, dito, anong takeaway natin dito, no? Kasi yung iba nagsasabi, ay, mataas ang income mo, eh di mataas din yung tax mo. Parang siguro dapat, ano bang attitude? Ako, I'm happy kung mataas yung income ko at mataas yung tax ko.
For me, if you say you want to pay more, they want to pay higher tax, I would say yes. I would phrase yes. See, that means I'm earning more.
That's correct.
Attitude kasi is, it's about what we're letting go and we're not looking at what we're keeping. So let's look at the top marginal tax rate at $180,000. If we earn $10,000, you're letting go of $44,700, but you're keeping $5,700. Sorry, $5,300. So I'd still keep more than half. And I would still be I would be better off. So I would go and get that extra $10,000. But the attitude kasi ng iba is, oh, it's not worth it. So I'm saying, okay, so you don't want the 5,300 because you have to pay 4,700. They said, no, that's not what I'm saying. And I said, but you're telling me you'd rather have zero than actually pay 47% tax. And I think that's the mindset ng most people. You probably don't need the money kasi if you need the money, you would go work. Pero siguro as a person, I've always look about what I can gain, not what I can lose. And I always talk to people say na don't use the tax as a driver for your decision. Use the income. Kasi at the end of the day, no government will take more than half. 47% is as far as they can do. Kasi they don't want to disincentivize you. If they take 51%, of course you'll say, oh, more than half. Maybe people will actually become disgruntled and say, I might not, because I myself might say, no, I'm not going to, let go 51% of my income. Kasi government. Pero the thing is, we also have to look at the, as you're saying, don't be selfish. Think about us as a community. Kasi the more you put in there, somebody will be helping. It's a welfare system where the more you can give, the more they ask of you. And so it's like your way of helping other less fortunate dito sa Australia. Kasi, coming from the Philippines, I'm one of the less fortunate ones. And I am where I am because of people who's opened door and helped me. And so I don't have any problem. I wish I would be paying 47% tax right now. Kasi that means that I'm at that highest top bracket. And I'm not there yet, but one day I hope to be, kahit na yun na yung aking form of charity is to pay 47% tax. But I said, I'm quite positive one day I'll get there.
That's good. That's nice to hear. Yeah, everyone will get there. As long as and you can see the benefit of, as I've said, taxation system in Australia. You see them in hospitals, you see them on the roads, you see them straight away when you go out. You see them in parks, you see them in school, and all of this around us, and it's all working. So be happy paying to the government. That's working. Okay, so with that, thank you very much, Chris, for your time today. I'm sure we had a really lovely discussion tonight.
Thank you.
And those of you who are needing a taxation advisor and needing an accountant or someone just to have a look and make an accounting or taxation planning for you and in the future, you have Chris Ramos. Contact him and he will be happy to help. Now, for the meanwhile, nandito po kami sa Auspac Visa. Wait for us for next week. We're going to have another engaging discussion about family law in Australia. So kung may mga tanong kayo sa divorce, paghihiwalay, pwede ba, hindi ba pwede, anong mangyayari, and anong jurisdiction ang nakasakop dito, and all the complications involved. So yeah, come on Wednesday. We will be doing family law for visa holders. Okay? Pwede ba mag-asawa kung may asawa pa doon? Pwede na ba kaming mag-divorce? Yun yung mga pag-uusapan natin next time. Okay, so maraming salamat po. Muli po, Teresa Cardona from Visa Mo Sagot Ko. Hatid po sa inyo ng Auspac Visa. See you on Wednesday. Maraming salamat po. Bye!
Thank you very much.
Recording stop.